Hi everybody and welcome back to our channel, Two Bumps Same Love. It's just going to be me in this video because Kat doesn't really know too much about the ovulation point of things, so it's just going to be me solely speaking.
I can't take any of the credit for this, so this is the expert here.
Okay, what she said, that was not planned. As you guys know, we just wing these videos. We try not to do as much editing as possible. We don't really have the time for it. So yeah, this video is just going to be speaking to you guys about ovulation. A warning now, this video can go a little bit TMI. However, I do have HG, as you guys know, so I can only speak to a certain point about the TMI sort of stuff. But we will be discussing things like cervical mucus. And yeah, just so that we clear, I am not a professional in any way. I am not a medical doctor or in the profession at all. This is purely just me doing research, chatting to other women. I basically spent so much time trying to figure out how it was the best time to start checking your ovulation, and the process that worked and seemed to have worked really well for us. So let's just not waste any time and get straight to it. Okay, so one of the first things that you would like to do, or what you would want to do when you are tracking your ovulation, is to download a period tracking app. We use an app called My Period Calendar, and I also use an app called Premom. These apps have really worked well for me, and what these apps do, especially Premom, is it kind of goes over into when you get pregnant too. And it starts to count down your days with your pregnancy, what's happening with your body, what's happening with the baby, etc. It's a really, really cool app. What these apps allow you to do is you put in all the information about your last period, how long are your periods, all sorts of information it will ask you. And based on all that information, it will start to generate when you have a fertile window. Your fertile window is about 7 days worth of when you are more likely to conceive. You really need to know when your fertile window is so that you know when you're going to start to inseminate. So that's the really nice thing about the app. If you've got things like PCOS and other sorts of issues where your period is not that regular, the nice thing about the app is that it starts to see if you do get any sort of rhythm when it comes to you logging your period. Okay, so I would highly suggest that you get something like that. You log when you start your period, you log when your period ends, you log your symptoms, you can log information, for example, of cervical mucus. You can log heaps of stuff. So it's a really, really cool app to get. I would highly suggest getting that first. If you're planning on getting pregnant and you're only planning on a couple of months' time, get the app, start to get a feel of when you're ovulating, when your fertile window is. Just all sorts of information like that is really, really helpful. Same with tracking your ovulation, with everything that we're going to speak about. Rather do it earlier so that you have a better idea of when you're actually ovulating. Okay, so the next thing that we want to try and make sure that you guys buy are these ovulation strips. Okay, these ovulation strips are really cheap. If you're here in New Zealand, you can get them on a website called Emax. If you're overseas, you can get them on Amazon. They're really, really cheap. Any other country from there, even here, if you want to buy them, you can buy them on Amazon. Otherwise, Emax's website. So how these babies work is it tracks your LH hormone. Your LH hormone is what rises and what peaks to release an egg, and it happens when you guys are ovulating. And we obviously need to know when we're ovulating so that we inseminate at the right time. So inside you get a little strip like this, pretty tiny. And on the back it does give you instructions, so don't worry too much about listening to me. I'm going to give a very brief description on what to do. So pee in a little cup, and you want to dip the stick in, and you want to dip it up until the little black line. And what will happen is you'll see dye will run through. When the dyes run through, I usually would take it out and just leave it on the side to develop. On these strips, there's a control line that just tells you that it's a valid test, and then there is a test line. For those who have seen pregnancy tests, if you get a very, very, very faint line, you can be pregnant. With these, there's always going to be a line. So the line is to basically just tell you that you've got luteinizing hormone inside you, but you want to be able to see when that surges. So when that starts to get darker, when that line gets closer and closer to the test line. When it's close to the test line, you know that you will be ovulating soon and that you've reached your LH peak. So that's essentially how these work. Now, when you're using these, you kind of are like, is this a positive? Am I at my peak? I'm not sure. It can get really, really overwhelming and confusing. So what I did, because I am super anal about knowing exactly what's happening with my body, I got these. These are clear blue digital ovulation tests. Now, these, I don't have a box, so I can't show you what the box looks like. My mom sent me these from South Africa. You can buy them anywhere in the world, even here in New Zealand, but they were just cheaper for my mom to send them here. So you need to make sure when you buy these that you do not buy the advanced test. The advanced test gives you a flashing smiley and then a solid smiley, and it gives you like 4 days of fertility, but you already know when your fertile window is going to be, and they're known to be faulty. So this is the best because it's either a simple yes or no. So when I started to see this test start to get darker and darker, I would start to use one of these. Using one of these tests would basically confirm whether this was a yes or a no. And doing it this way just helped me kind of get a better understanding of these, getting a better understanding of when I was ovulating. I just really like them. So I do highly recommend buying these clear blue digital tests in conjunction with it. Okay, and then when you get your LH peak, basically that's just to tell you that you've had the surge in the hormone. Any time from then, between 24 and 36 hours, you will physically release the egg. So that's just kind of gives you a ballpark figure of how much time you have to work. When the egg is released, your egg will only live for about 12 to 24 hours. After that, it's dead. You have got no chance of getting pregnant. Well, I can't say none, but extremely, extremely slim chance of getting pregnant. So just remember that an LH peak does not mean you are ovulating right then and then. It just means that you're going to ovulate between 12 and 36 hours from that time. Okay? Very important thing to understand is that sperm, especially fresh sperm, for those using frozen sperm, it's a different story, but fresh sperm lasts between 4 and 5 days in the right temperature. So if you've inseminated, they're going to survive for 4 to 5 days. So it just kind of gives you an idea of when exactly you should inseminate. For us, we will let you know exactly actually when we inseminated in our next video. So it was just really a good understanding of you don't have to worry and be like down to the hour, down to 12 hours. You have got time. So don't get too overwhelmed with it. Timing of when to test your LH and do the urine test. You don't have to do it with first morning urine. You don't have to do any urine holds or anything like that. Just test it when you can. Me and Kat would both test in the afternoon, probably about 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, depending, just to kind of get an idea of when we were going to reach our peak or not. So don't worry too much about the time. Okay, then this is not really something we used a lot. We did try it, and it was measuring up to all our other methods of regarding when we're reaching our peak. But for us, it wasn't something we stuck by. So the maybe baby This is like a little microscope, little tool thing. So basically how it works is you open it like this. You'll like spit on your finger a bit and rub it onto the glass. You'll let it dry. Once it's dry, you will put it back on, and then you look through the little hole, and while you're looking through that hole, you push the little button at the back, and this shines a green light. What happens with this is when you have got an increase in LH, your saliva starts to look like a fern. So it's what we call ferning on this little device. There is a little pamphlet that comes with it to tell you how it's used. But again, this is not something that we stuck with or used with our tracking sort of, our tracking methods, but it does work. So perhaps if you've got PCOS or if you've got something along those lines, maybe it is something that you would want to use just to broaden your options of if you're going to be ovulating or not. Okay, so the next thing that you would also kind of look at is your cervical mucus. When you start to reach your fertile window, you'll start to notice that you've got things are a little bit more mucousy. There's a little bit more going on, a little more discharge coming out. That's basically you getting ready to ovulate. Your mucus will, within your fertile window, it will start to get a little bit gelatinous. And as you get closer to your peak, it starts to get a little bit more watery and a little bit more stringy. You would be able to like string it between your fingers. That sort of viscosity is when you are absolutely at your most fertile. Just imagine you're a little sperm swimming around and you enter a mucus area, and when it's all that gelatinous type of thing, you're not going to be able to move. You're going to be like, I'm stuck. But if it's quite stringy, you're going to slick through it. So that is how you tell with the cervical mucus. I didn't really go, I mean, I knew that I was reaching my fertile window. I didn't test the cervical mucus. I just noticed that it was there. It was a bit more watery. It was a bit more stringy. So it happened to fall in line with everything else that we've been doing. Okay. Then the last thing when it comes to tracking your ovulation is you want to look at buying a basal body temperature thermometer. This is basically just your ordinary thermometer. But what you want to make sure is that the thermometer that you buy goes to 2 decimal places. So, for example, if your temperature you're running at 36.8 degrees, you want to make sure that it's, for example, 36.84 degrees. You need to know what that decimal place is going to be, because that little bit of change in your temperature can indicate whether you have ovulated or not. Okay, that is what temping basically does, is it tells you whether you've ovulated, whether you've actually physically released an egg or not. Us as women, there are cycles where we don't actually release an egg. So we'll go through the motion and everything like that, but a physical egg is actually not released. This can confirm whether ovulation has taken place, and I'll explain to you why now. But before I do, just so that you know, you can get this checked with your doctor. They can do blood tests at certain times in your cycle to be able to determine if you are ovulating. But it's nice to be able to check at home whether you actually released an egg or not. Okay. I started doing this after my first attempt at insemination. I didn't get too far because I landed up with my positive pregnancy test. So yeah, it was working. It was working till I stopped using it. So just to explain, your temperature will dip just before you've released an egg. So as your body releases the egg, you dip, and once the egg is released, it goes back up. About 24 hours after the egg is released, your temperature will shoot back up, and it will stay quite high until your period comes, which we're hoping for you guys, your period won't come. So what happens is on your period app is you will take notes and track your temperature every day, and you'll be able to see and get an idea of whether you have released an egg or whether you have not released an egg. So just keep putting your temperature in the morning, and you'll start to see a bit of a chart flowing. What's very, 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 very important is that you take your temperature in the morning before you get up, before you take a sip of water, before you do anything. If you just roll over in bed, stick this in your mouth, take the temperature, and record it in your phone. What's very important is that you've had 4 hours of sleep before you've taken your temperature. So if you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but you wake up at 6 for work, when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom or whatever the case is, take your temperature before you get out of bed. It seems like it's something you may forget, but often when you are in this trying to conceive sort of mentality, it becomes quite an easy thing for you to do. So yeah, that is my advice when it comes to temping. The video that I'll be doing next will be just the tools that you need for when you are inseminating, and then Kat will be joining me again, where we'll actually talk through the insemination process. So this was a little bit more of a serious video. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and I hope that to some degree this has helped you. And yeah, all the best. Speak later. Bye.